As many of you know, Buddhism is about taking the middle path. Sometimes it seems like that's just the easy way out, but you'll find that the deeper you get into practicing Buddhism and the philosophy behind this practice, the more you'll see that the middle path is not always the easiest place to be, because you tend to get right in between these large issues on both sides, and trying to find that middle path can sometimes mean that you have to reconcile two just horrible, immovable objects against some kind of an irresistible force. And so this is one of the things I'm talking about today. It's called forgiveness. Forgiveness is, in general terms, well, I looked it up in the dictionary just to find out what the dictionary says. And it says that forgiving is a process in which every person literally lets go completely of any ill feelings toward another, toward oneself, or toward an entity or situation. Well, it's almost impossible, I'm sorry to say. It's very difficult to let go of all of your feelings all at once. You can't just have everything disappear and have everything be okay. And so one of the good things about Buddhism is it gives you processes. It gives you ways to deal with issues and explains how to work through these things. So forgiveness is one of these topics. One of my favorite definitions of forgiveness is to give up all hope for a better past. We can't change it. We've already messed it up. It's all gone. Can't change the past. So we have to just give up hope and move on with it. Our minds tend to go over and over the past. If we find things that have happened in the past that we don't like, the emotions pull us back there, and we keep grinding over these same things, and they go over and over again. So one of the ideas, is to learn ways to let this stuff go. Well, this causes a lot of stress, and we all know how bad stress is for you. So I'll just skip over that. One of the other examples I found were these two World War II prisoners talking to each other after having met, years after their release. And one of the prisoners asked the other one, "Well, have you forgiven your captors yet?" The other prisoner says, "No, I'll never forgive those so-and-sos. They're just evil, vicious people, and they deserve to burn for all eternity." And the first prisoner says, "Well, it looks like you're still in prison then, aren't you?" Held captive by his own emotions. The emotions just keep bringing you back to that situation and making you replay it over and over and over again. Does this do anything at all to the person or people who have wronged you? No, it doesn't do a bit. The only thing it does is it makes you upset. And this is why forgiveness is so important, is because we can let go of these toxic emotions that keep coming back and affecting us in our daily lives. It's an honorable pursuit. It's not just about letting them off the hook, because you're actually letting yourself off the hook if you choose to forgive somebody. It's not an easy thing to do. It's actually very difficult to forgive. And so the process is to literally shift your attention to something else. Now, this can be thought of as an exercise in neuroplasticity, where you're taking your consciousness that's focused on one thing and breaking that connection and moving it over to something else on a conscious level. This actually creates more connections in that new direction, and it literally severs the connections in the old direction. So neuroplasticity is all about retraining your body and your mind to do different things that it has in the past. But it's not always that easy. Now, the Buddhists love to do meditations. They sit around all the time staring at their navels and the walls and whatever else they happen to have in front of them, and they meditate. And so there are a number of really nice guided meditations. We're going to do one a little bit later to help you break the connections for those attachments that are still there. Yes. Now, forgiveness is very important, and you find this in just about all of the religious texts all over the world. For instance, it's in the Bible. Jesus of Nazareth supposedly said that we must forgive 70 times, 7 times before it'll sink in. You've all heard this probably. Well, that's a lot of forgiveness. It's what, 490? I had to use my calculator. So he says you have to forgive somebody 490 times before it actually takes effect. The Buddhists aren't that bad. We might have a little bit better method. If you do the meditation, the instructions for this meditation, if you repeat it 200 times, then you're in the clear. Now I have a copy on the back table. You can pick it up on the way out if you'd like. There's a whole list of details about what forgiveness is not. And on the flip side, there's actually the meditation, a shortened version of the one we're going to do today. So if you want to practice this, feel free to take a handout home with you. The Bible also says that forgiving clears the mind and makes a human be able to receive angels' voices, messages from angels, which I've always wanted, but they don't talk to me very much these days. The Dalai Lama talked about forgiveness. He called it the highest level of attitude. Forgiveness is one of the highest attitudes you can possibly have. He said human beings by their very nature deserve compassion and forgiveness. And so there's never any reason to harbor ill will against anyone else. Not only are you doing something positive for them, you might be able to put yourself in that mind frame, but you're doing something positive for yourself at all. The Lama says, try not to develop anger toward that person. Act with equanimity to separate the action from the actor. We can condemn the act, but know that the actor needs compassion. Justice is needed without anger or hatred toward that person. So if you're attached to the anger or attitude, then the anger will stay in you, and it'll stay there. So we have to do something to get that out. It doesn't hurt the other person, it just destroys your own frame of mind. And so anger is for us. Forgiveness is for us. I suppose anger is too. But if we have forgiveness, then that will get rid of that anger and make us a little more calm. It's not about them deserving anything. It's not about an act of weakness on our part. We're not showing how weak we are by forgiving them, because I'll tell you, it's harder to give up that anger and that blame than it is to keep it. It really is. Once you get into it, you'll see. Forgiveness is also not something you just do once, but it's an ongoing process. It's like this neuroplasticity. You have to keep practicing it, keep changing those neural pathways in order for the mind to remember, oh, don't go over here, go that way instead. It's just a lot nicer. And the mind will learn pretty quickly. You don't have to talk to these people again. If somebody's done you wrong, you don't have to go and make up with them. You don't have to tell them, make nice or anything like that. You can just ignore them if you want. You can go your own way. It's not sentimental. You don't have to plaster up papery wallflower over all of it. Just to cover it over. That's not the idea. The idea is to deal with it directly and understand it as an emotion in the self, in the body. And it's not about the other person at all. It's about this person. It's about this body. And so forgiveness is a capacity to understand, release, or to move past the drama in our lives instead of watching the same scenes play out over and over again. And it's a freedom, actually, to choose how you react to your past and how you view your past and how the outlooks you want to maintain for the future. And so there's a little story I like to tell. It's presented by Jack Kornfeld. It's about when he was taking a flight across the U.S. one time. He sat down next to this fellow who was a government man. He worked in inner cities with gang members, children, hardened criminals, and tried to get them off the streets, try to rehabilitate them. So he told Jack a story about this young boy. He was only 16, and he wanted to join a gang. And so in order to join the gang, he had to commit a murder. And so after school one day, he walked up to this child in the schoolyard, killed him, shot him dead. Didn't even know the kid, just shot him. Well, the police caught this kid, threw him in jail, and he was in jail and was taken away. And so then he went for his arraignment, and the mother of the murdered child was there. And she was sitting in the audience watching them. And the judge sentenced him, and the bailiff had him in handcuffs, and they were taking him away out of the courtroom to go to jail. And the mother stood up and walked over to where he was and looked at him and got his attention and said, "That boy you killed was my son, and I'm going to kill you." And then the bailiff led the youngster out of the courtroom and put him in jail, and the mother went home. Well, about a year later, 6 months later, I guess it was, about 6 months later, or a year later, the mother went to visit the boy in jail, brought him some cigarettes and $20, and maybe some cookies or something, gave them to him, and asked how he was doing, if he was getting along okay, if there was anything he needed. And he said no, he was fine. And she asked, "Well, is it okay if I come back and visit you once in a while you're in jail?" And the boy said, "Well, yeah, that would be okay." It was pretty nasty in there. And so every few months over the next 5 years or however long he was in prison, this woman would come back to visit him. And she'd always bring him a little food, some money, some cigarettes, or whatever he asked for. And then a little while before the boy was due to be released, she asked him, "What are you going to do when you get out of prison? Do you have any plans? Any place you want to go?" The boy thought about it for a minute. He said, "No, I don't know anybody. I don't want to go back to my old life. I don't know what I'm going to do." And so she said, "Well, I know somebody who has a factory, and maybe he can get you a job there. Maybe he can give you a job. If it's okay, I'll check to see if you can get a job with them." And he said, "Okay, that would be great." And so she did, and came back a little while later, and a couple of days later, and said that she got a job for him after he got out of prison, that he could go to work there, and had arranged it with his parole officer and everything, and so that he had a job. She said, "But do you have any place to stay? Do you have family or any place that you could live?" And the boy said, No, I don't have any place I could go. I hadn't thought about it." And the woman said, "Well, I have an extra room in my house, and you can stay with me if you'd like. The factory's just down the road, and you can take the bus. I have a spare room now. There's nobody staying there." And the boy said, "Okay, that would be good." So the day came, he got out of prison, he went to stay with this woman, and went to work at this small factory. And he worked there. Every day he went. He was very, very punctual. And so about 6 months later, after the boy had been established and everything, she called him into the living room and said, "I'd like to talk to you for a minute." So he walked in and sat down, and she said, "Do you remember that day in the courtroom when I told you I was going to kill you for killing my son?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am, I'll never forget that day." She said, "Well, I have killed you." She said that when you were that boy in the courtroom, you were the kind of kid that could walk up and just kill someone in cold blood. And she said, "You can't do that now. I've killed in you that person, and now you're a completely new boy. You're going to work every day. You're making something of yourself. You've been talking about going to school." And she said, "But I don't have a son anymore. I don't have anybody in my life to take care of me and nobody to stay with. And if you are agreeable, I'll adopt you and you can be my son and stay with me here." And he said, that would be very nice. So she did. She adopted him, and they're together right now, as far as I know. And so this is one aspect of forgiveness. It's not about the other person, really. It's about you. It's for the beauty of the soul and your capacity to live your own life. And so I've put together a guided meditation that I'd like to do really quickly. It'll take about 15 or 20 minutes or so. And so I'd like you to start with a mindful presence. Try to bring your mind into the body and just feel yourself breathing. Just feel the breath go in and out very gently, very nice and easy. Breathing in and out. Feel your presence in this room. Maybe just feel the tension drain from your face a little bit. Just a little bit behind the eyes. Maybe feel a little bit of relaxation. And let your face just relax a little bit. That will help. And this is the first of 3 reflections as you sit under the tree of your own enlightenment. There are many ways in which I have hurt and harmed others, knowingly and unknowingly, betrayed and abandoned them so many times. I remember all these now, and I feel the sorrows that I carry. So let yourself just remember some of the ways you have betrayed and abandoned others, and feel those feelings that you still carry. And in the many ways that I have hurt or harmed you, betrayed you, caused you suffering out of my own fear and confusion, out of my own pain and anger and hurt and misunderstanding, in this moment I ask for your forgiveness. I ask your forgiveness. Please forgive me. May I be forgiven. And as you ask, feel the movement of the heart that's willing to ask for forgiveness, and perhaps even to receive it. As we do this practice, tears of regret might come. All of those things may come welling up. In the second direction, just as I have caused pain and hurt, suffering to others, so too have I hurt myself, knowingly and unknowingly betrayed myself, abandoned myself, abandoned my own deepest values and love. Just as I have hurt or harmed others, I have judged and betrayed myself in so many ways. I remember these too. And let yourself feel all the ways you have caused suffering to yourself in just the same ways you have caused suffering to others. Feel the sorrow you carry for this. Now again, breathing gently, from the same practice of forgiveness in the second direction. Just as I have hurt or betrayed or harmed others, so have I done to myself, betrayed and harmed myself, caused myself suffering in body and mind in so many ways, out of fear and confusion, out of my own pain and frustration and hurt. And in this moment, I offer my forgiveness. I hold myself with mercy and tender forgiving for my own humanity. In all the ways I've messed up, caused myself pain, I forgive myself. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. And finally, in the third direction, there are many ways in which others have hurt and harmed me, knowingly and unknowingly. We have all been betrayed and abandoned. We have all had suffering and pain visited upon us by others. Every one of us has been hurt. I remember these too, the ways I have been abandoned, betrayed, and hurt by others. I feel the sorrows that I still carry. Let yourself feel those sorrows, those pains, the treachery. And in the many ways that others have hurt me, betrayed, abandoned, caused me pain, to the extent that I am ready, I turn my heart in the direction of forgiveness. To the extent that I'm ready, I forgive you. I offer you forgiveness, and I release you. I can't bear the pain of carrying you in my heart anymore. To the extent that I am ready, I forgive you. And from this dark position, let you feel yourself lighten a little bit. Let your heart raise up a little bit. Feel the heaviness melt away to the extent that you're ready. And keeping these three directions in mind, let yourself come back to the room and refocus. Any people who know me here know I love to ring bells. So the handout has this basic meditation on it. I wanted to go through it with you to show precisely how to use this meditation. Now on the back, there are many different principles of forgiveness that you can go through and look at them. I don't think I have a list up here. Oh, wait a minute, here it is. The idea is to understand what forgiveness is and what it's not. It's not condoning whatever it is. It's not pampering over it. Not wallpapering over it. It's not sentimental. It's not for the other person who's wronged you. The sense of suffering in yourself, of still holding on to this lack of forgiveness, is it's all for you because you're holding on to this still. The whole idea is you're not being compassionate to the other person by forgiving them. It has nothing to do with the other person. It's all about yourself. You're being compassionate to your own self and not anyone else. The suffering is not in your own best interest, it says. And if you've identified which particular hindrances you're experiencing, and this was produced from my meditation course, so the hindrances are ways that keep you from enjoying yourself. If you're attached to something, it's a hindrance usually that's behind the whole thing. And so the idea is to, instead of focusing on the angst, you can shift your mind, you can shift the consciousness to a different state of mind, a little bit better state of mind, a forgiving state of mind. Not everybody's going to be able to do this. In fact, it's very difficult to sit and forgive. So the idea is that you start on people who are easiest to forgive. Some of us can't forgive ourselves. I mean, that's the hardest right there. Forgiving myself for doing that faux pas, I'll forget it. It'll go down in history as the worst. Reminds me of a story. I was having a Thanksgiving dinner one time back when I was in college, and I invited all my friends, and some of my family came. Is that better? Okay, well, I had a Thanksgiving dinner one time, and it was, lots of people came, and it was just a wonderful event, and I was proud of it. Cooked a big old turkey and made a big pot of cranberry sauce. And so we're all sitting around the table eating everything, and somebody tasted my cranberry sauce and sort of made a funny face, and I said, well, what's wrong with that? And he goes, well, it's got a very strange flavor, and so I tried it, and I had used salt instead of sugar in the cranberry sauce, and so it was a little bit off, you might say, and so that's one thing that will go down in history as the biggest faux pas of all, I suppose. But things like that are very difficult to forgive yourself for. Some people really have a problem with forgiving themselves for anything, and they hold on to this, and it becomes part of the identity. And if this is the case, then the idea is to focus on people, and like if you have a favorite pet, forgive them. Whoever's the easiest to forgive, that's where you start. And you make that little chink, and it's really nice, because once you start forgiving and start feeling the forgiveness, you can feel your heart lift a little bit. It actually opens up. It actually feels like you're opening it up and letting the sun shine on it. I don't know, it's just a weird thing. And the more you can pull that open, the more you can forgive, and the more you can let your heart out, the better it will feel. It makes a big difference. So you start with the simplest one. Start with your favorite cat or dog or goldfish or whoever you have, or your loved ones, and forgive them, and just make it a practice. And then after you get comfortable forgiving everyone in your immediate circle, then you can branch out to the big ones, the real hard ones, and pick up one at a time. Just do one at a time. Pick them off, forgive them, set them aside, do somebody else. I don't know. Some people have a rather long laundry list. I've winnowed mine down to just a few now, which is good. But they say it takes a long time to do this. It's a process. One of the other things to do is set your intention. And because that intention has a lot of power in your mind and in your consciousness. So if you can set an intention to forgive, and just generally, you don't even have to, forgive any particular person, because that might pull your thoughts back. And, whenever you have thoughts, they're inflamed by emotions sometimes, and most of these forgiving situations are very difficult to forgive, and they're charged with emotion, and so you're often running. Your mind is galloping across the plains of hatred and revenge with these people. And we've all been there. I mean, you don't have the corner on that stuff. Believe me, everybody thinks that way sometimes. And so the idea is you don't need to name them directly. if that's an issue, if it takes yourself away, if your mind goes off on these emotionally charged issues, just take the general stance and just forgive everybody. That might help sometimes. But everybody's a little different, and so you have to pick your battles, I suppose. And so you learn then the inner and outer forms of forgiveness. You can do the inner work, and if you want to, if you have to make reparations as part of this, like AA has this 12-step program or something that you can do, and you have to go make up for everything. And that's part of it, then you can do that if you'd like to. That helps some people. You have to be willing to grieve as well. If there are situations that have been covered over with layers and layers of thought, many times these are buried so deeply that you have not yet grieved. And so many times grief has to come out in order for this healing to be done. So and it depends, many people are like this, but most people aren't. It depends on who you are. There are lots of good books. Who was that? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on death, dying, and on grief and grieving said there are 5 stages of grief. There's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And so you have to go through all of these steps, supposedly. She makes a good case. But eventually you'll be able to just let it go. Forgiveness includes all of the dimensions of your life. It's not just in your mind. It's physical, because it causes stress. The stress causes cortisol and all kinds of other deleterious effects. You gain weight. I mean, not forgiving can actually cause you to get fat. Can you believe that? Yeah, it goes on and on. So it's also work on the emotions, it's work on the mind, interpersonal work, because it's helping you work through these relationships, and it's also cosmic work, that you're working on your spiritual consciousness. If you're a Buddhist, then you believe that we've been born many, many times, and it's all part of this overarching development of the soul, that you continue to work on it over time. Forgiveness also involves a shift in identity, and this is one of those things that is very. And I won't spend much time on this. I tend to go on and on. This is like a 2-hour course that I've boiled down today, and so the identity shift is kind of interesting, because we all develop the self-identity of who we are, and part of us is the one that hates Fred because he stole my lawnmower. I know he did it. It was out there. It was gone the next day. I know he took my lawnmower. And so that's part of our identity. We are who those thoughts are. Or we are what those thoughts are. I guess who those thoughts are. And so the idea is to take those thoughts that are bothering you and set them aside through one means or another. If you're holding a grudge, then forgiveness works. Sometimes there are other techniques for meditation and for mind handling. But you got to learn how to work with the neuroplasticity and change the mindset. And once you do that, shift away from these clutching, clinging ideas about how you're going to get back and get revenge over the guy that ran over your cat or whatever he did, then it's going to change your self-identity. No longer are you going to be the same person. You're going to be a different person. So it shifts. And it also changes a perspective. The idea is that we're much bigger people than all these little dramas that play out in our life. And if we can get away from these little dramas that eat up all of our thought cycles and just get rid of them, then we can become who we really are, a little closer to our true soul or our true consciousness. Because that's what's distracting us. That's what's tearing us apart from being who, that shining light that we really want to be. And so with that, so I'll let you go today. Do you have any questions?